to heal from what they've gone through. And then I also have Executive 31, which I'm really excited about. It's a new business that I'm in the process of opening up right now. And the idea behind Executive 31 is to create a digital community that supports, encourages, and lifts up other female nonprofit executives. Because during my time in this role, it's been really hard. It's a really difficult role to be in. And you have so many people that you have to please all the time when you're in the nonprofit world. You have to please donors and your board and staff and your clients, and it can just become a lonely space. And so I realized during this that a lot of women in my shoes and in my position feel the same way. And so I want an opportunity to connect these women. I'm fascinated by these incredible nonprofit women who are sacrificing their lives to make this world a better place. And I want to highlight their stories, and I want to encourage them, and I want to speak life into them and let them know that they've got this, and create a community around that. So we're developing an app. And again, we're in the beginning stages, so I'll let you guys know more about that when we have opportunities to connect with that. But
that sounds exciting, and it sounds like a podcast is in the making soon.
I would love it. Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about it. It's needed.
So, sex trafficking, that's important work.
Yeah.
And it's hard work. And it's heart work and passion work.
Yep.
So what did you do before that?
I was an analyst at an oil and gas service company in downtown Denver, and then I raised my kids. I was a stay-at-home mom as well for a while.
And what shifted you to work in this type of, again, passion work?
Yeah. It really boils down to things that I experienced when I was young. I experienced not having my dad around. My dad was abusive to my mom. He was in and out of my life. Going through a lot of the, negative repercussions of a young girl not having her dad around. I experienced sexual assault at the age of 14. I was raped by a stranger at the age of 17 in downtown Denver at a bar and left alone on the streets. I experienced sexual exploitation by leadership in a local church that I was attending. And so out of those experiences, I was just so broken and just in such a dark place, and I hated myself. I hated myself so much that I actually created this false identity, and I went by this different name, and I hung around gangs, and I was just in a lot of environments that were really destructive and violent and, full of drugs and partying and all that. I actually got expelled from every school in Denver for an entire year for being so violent, and I was just so broken. But I was able to come out of that, and for me, I'm a Christian lady, and so when I finally really hit rock bottom, and I was like, I've got to change. This cannot be the rest of my life. I can't live like this anymore. And God really touched my heart, and I began healing. And that changed me, and that changed my outlook on things. And it took me from just looking within and looking at all the stuff that I had gone through and all the self-pity that I had. And my heart just began to be really compassionate towards other young girls and women that were going through sexual trauma and sexual violence. And I knew that I wanted to do something to help these girls know that there was hope for healing for them. And what that did is that brought me to Thailand, Pattaya, Thailand in 2004. And I went on a trip there, and it was my first encounter with human trafficking. I had never heard the term before. And,
How did you encounter that?
It's all around. So I went to this city called Pattaya, Thailand. And Pattaya is 62 miles southeast of Bangkok. And when I was there 15 years ago, 70% of the population was involved in prostitution. So it's a sex tourism town. So everywhere you look, it's Western men and Thai women and children. And so that's just all around you. That's what these men go there for. And when we're talking to the locals and everything, and they're telling us about what goes on in this city, and I just couldn't believe it. And for me, again, my heart was already so compassionate towards women going through things like this. But to me, human trafficking was the worst, because not only did you have this young girl or this woman that was being raped and sexually assaulted multiple times on a daily basis, you also had somebody else profiting off of that. And to me, that was the most disturbing thing. And I just knew from that point that I needed to do something about it, that I couldn't know about this happening and then not do anything about it.
You say that most of the clients are from the U.S.
The United States is one of the top buyers of commercial sex and involvement in sex trafficking. Yeah, it's really disturbing. And that's the trouble, is that sex trafficking exists because there's such a demand for it. There's a demand for sex with children in the United States, in New York, in Colorado. And that's the most disturbing part of it all. But coming back from Thailand, I spent years educating myself on the issue of human trafficking. I wanted to know more about it, what it was, who it was happening to, and how I could help. And I found that Colorado had some of the highest instances of reported child sex trafficking, and there was a huge lack of services. There was no safe home for these girls, so that when law enforcement, they would recover a girl from a sex trafficking situation, average age of entry into the commercial sex industry is 12 years old. Over 90% of these kiddos have a past history of sexual abuse. So you're talking about girls that have known nothing but abuse and neglect in their life. And then when they get, quote unquote, rescued out of this situation, they were going to jail or they were going to detention centers because there's no place for them to go. And I really just raised my hand quite literally and was like, I'm going to open up a safe home for these girls. And that's how Extended Hands of Hope started. And that's how I really made a pivot in my career and what I wanted to do with my life. I never thought that I would be running a nonprofit. I didn't go to school for that. I went to school for computer science. And but this just called my heart.
And you have a beautiful mind.
Yeah, well, I can't do computer science anymore, but
you could if you wanted to.
Maybe. I don't want to. But yeah, my heart just was called to this.
Right. Now you say, I know that do you work with law enforcement? Because I know that it's important to work, in conjunction with them and to educate.
Oh yeah, we've done trainings to law enforcement.
Okay.
But we also work very closely with them. We work with law enforcement, we work with FBI, we work with social services, because a lot of these kids, unfortunately, have a lot of interaction with those people. And so we not only want to be a resource for these girls, but we also wanted to be a resource for law enforcement, because at the end of the day, when, we would sit there before we were open and we had the safe home, and people would say, well, how dare they, take these girls and put them in jail? And I said the same thing. I'm like, shame on you for doing that. But they're like, well, what else are we supposed to do with these girls? We don't have anywhere else to bring them. At least if they're in jail, we know where they are, and they're not on the streets anymore.
Safer,
Right. It was like, the lesser evil option. And so we wanted to provide resources for law enforcement too, because they can't do everything. So we really respect and work closely with them.
And how long has your organization been up?
A little over 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And aftercare, I know, is really important. What kind of aftercare do you provide?
That's what we
girls?
focus on.
Okay.
We are a restorative aftercare program. So we do some prevention, some preventative activities, but mostly we do aftercare. So that's through the safe home. So really the girls that we're working with, unfortunately, have already been trafficked and have already been exploited. We do work with some girls that are what would be considered high risk, meaning they're not quite identified as a victim of human trafficking yet, but they're identified as high risk to being trafficked. And so in that sense, we're working with them to try to prevent them from being trafficked. But really, we're providing them with a safe space to live. We have a therapist there full time, a 24/7 program. We have 32 employees that work round the clock with these kiddos. We have, like I said earlier, a licensed school. A lot of these kids are 2 to 5, 6 years behind in school.
Right.
And so, what I love about our school is we can really individualize their academic plan, and we work with them no matter where they're at. And so, I mean, we had one girl who was 12 years old, but academically she was at a kindergarten level, and developmentally she was at a 6-year-old level. And we were able to create a safe, comfortable space for her to work on things that a kindergartner would work on without her feeling ashamed in front of any of the other girls. So that's really important to us, is that we're able to individualize their treatment program.
And empower them with skills that
Yeah.
they need to make a living.
Absolutely. Yeah. To make a living, but really, I mean, we're talking about young girls here. We're talking about a 12-year-old girl.
Okay.
And so what we're trying to do is they're usually coming to us and they're in crisis mode. And so we're trying to help them stabilize their situation, help them to see that there are safe people out there, to build a trusting relationship with them, and to help them see that there are resources for them. Because at the end of the day, they're young, but they still have to make the decision to want to use the resources that we provide for them. But those are all the services we give. Most importantly, what we do is we show these girls that they're loved, and there's a community out there that loves them and supports them and wants nothing in return. We don't demand anything from them. We are just here to support them and to be there for them.
And as an adult survivor, do you ever get triggered?
Oh yeah, I even though I wasn't trafficked, I went through a lot of, like I said, sexual offenses, and I had to face up to what I had gone through, because I just started talking about my story maybe like a year and a half ago, and I'm almost 40. And the reason
And
I had to...
That's about when it happens,
Yeah, I had to, because I was experiencing a lot of vicarious trauma and secondary trauma, which is basically this trauma coming up in me from the trauma that I was around, that I was hearing all the time. And again, I've been in anti-trafficking for over 15 years. And I'm the kind of person that I really take that on. Like, I think about it all the time. I want to do something all the time. I really take that seriously, a little too seriously. I'm very, show a lot of empathy towards that. Yeah. And so it really wears on me. And I have found myself over the last 6 years having a lot of burnout, having a lot of going through depression, going through a lot of anxiety, being overwhelmed. And I realized that I needed to talk to somebody about what I had gone through, because I knew that if I was going to give my best to these girls, which is what they deserve, I needed to be I needed to be healed too. I needed to take my own medicine and walk the talk.
Right.
And so that's, yeah, I've dealt with that, but I started meeting with somebody a year and a half ago, and I've been working on what I've gone through, and it's been really a healing process for me. Yeah.
So, statistics say that 1 in 10 people share the same background or same, situation where they've been abused.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's much higher than that. My experience has
Right.
been. What are some advice that you can give our listeners, our viewers, about when they're listening to this and they're activated in their heart, or they're moved or triggered?
Yeah.
What can they do to get help?
Yeah. I think the most important thing is to talk to somebody and to realize that you're not alone. And for me, I carried around almost these secrets, right, that I didn't tell people about. And I didn't realize, I thought I could just forget.
Yes.
Just pretend like that didn't happen and it wasn't affecting me today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not true. Okay, I would venture to bet that some of the challenges that you're having in your life, or some of the things that the mountains you keep going around again and again and again that you're trying to get past and overcome, a lot of times for me, I realized that what was holding me back from full freedom in my life was that I wasn't talking to anybody about what I'd gone through. I wasn't facing what I had gone through. And so I think it's so important to just find somebody that you trust. For me, it was a therapist. I don't trust a whole lot of people. And so I went to a licensed therapist, and we started talking through things, and they're trained in how to help you when you're feeling triggered or to help you work through that stuff. And that was a really, really powerful step for me, and it was a decision that needed to happen. So I do encourage people, don't try to pretend like it didn't happen. Don't be afraid to talk about it. You don't have to share it with the public, but you should find somebody, one person that you can talk to, because it really, really is freeing.
Yeah. And I know that I wrote down trust because trust
Mm-hmm.
is an issue. I think it's a thread that runs through this narrative.
Yep.
People who have been abused, they often struggle with trusting again.
Yeah.
But what that can do is it can also shut off possibilities
Mm-hmm.
for the future. Talk to me about trust. Talk to
Mm-hmm.
me about your journey with trust and
Yeah.
how you're looking to open that up.
Mm-hmm. That's tough.
I know.
Oh, it's tough.
I
Don't
know.
ask my husband about that. No, I mean, it's a survival tactic. You know, when you've gone through things, it's really difficult. In order to trust, you really have to be vulnerable. And I don't like being vulnerable. I like to protect myself because I don't want to hurt the way that I hurt before. And so trust is difficult for me. It's something that I've been married for almost 15 years now. In April, it'll be 15 years. And I think I'm just now starting to trust that my husband actually loves me.
And has
And
your best interest at
yes,
heart.
and has my best interest at heart, really cares about me, and isn't just using me for something. I'm just now starting to believe that and receive that. And so
And that's hard on the partner.
it's so hard. I mean, I'm so thankful, honestly, that he's still around because, especially in the beginning, you know, I put him through hell because I just assumed that he was going to do what my dad did to me, what those guys did to me. And as much as I wanted to trust him and not feel that way, that's how I would just react to everything and how I was like rewired. And so I really had to rewire and renew my way of thinking. And that's just been a process that I've been working on over just a little over a year. So I'm working on, I want to be able to trust people again. I think that we don't need to just be trusting everybody. You know, you need to pick and choose. But especially with my husband, I do need to learn to trust him because I feel like that's how we're going to develop the deepest relationship that we can have.
Right. And I want to commend you because you have been vulnerable with us. You've been very trusting in giving us your story or sharing with us
Right.
your story. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I know that that's not easy.
Yeah.
But I want to tell you that, I mean, as a survivor myself,
Mm-hmm.
keep practicing it.
Right.
Keep moving in that direction. And what you said, you know, I have to take my own medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And so the listeners are, you know, listening to what you've done. And so I want to thank you for that. So I also, tell me your vision for your organization.
Mm-hmm. For Executive 31?
Whichever
For
one.
both?
For
Well,
both.
my vision for Extending Hands of Hope is to grow it. We need to open up more homes. Over the Christmas holiday, we had over 20 girls on our wait list. There is such a need for more of our services. So